Jill and her team looked at their own customer transactions and discovered an increasing number of customers moving funds to alternative payment services, such as digital wallets and mobile payment apps. This corresponded with a noticeable decline in customers' deposits and accounts at Community Bank. They knew they had to take action. Today, people and businesses expect to make and receive payments at the click of a button any time of the day, every day of the year, including account-to-account transfers, bill pay, and person-to-person transactions. The FedNow service will be here in 2023. Will you be ready?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Incubator Weekly. I am Amanda, and I'm joined, as always, by my trusty co-host, Rion. Hello today, Rion.
Howdy, everyone.
Hi. And our guest today is a fellow strategist within the Incubator, and you know him already as Ash Francis. Hi, Ash.
Hey.
So today we're showing you something that we've not shown before, which is a game that the Incubator built. So without much further ado, what is this game really, Ash, and where did the idea for it even come from?
Yeah, so probably about, maybe even 2 years now, me and Alex and I were feeling sort of burnt out with a year ago, a lot of Thorchain work and a lot of heavy, compliance work on my end. Alex was just doing a lot of work on just hardcore programming, and just
And
feeling
Alex,
something.
remind us who Alex is.
So Alex is my co-founder. He's mostly the genius that does all of the hard development work. I do some of the easier stuff, but he's been working with Dash for since 2017, just as long as I have. But he's the wizard behind the curtain to a degree, whereas I'm more of the face of it, of everything that we're doing. And yeah, Alex is just a very talented developer. And he built the Maya integration prior to that. It was the Thorchain integration. So yeah, about a year ago, we were feeling we wanted to do something somewhat different, but we were also seeing a lot of news about blockchain gaming. We spoke to a guy from a studio called Chibli Games who was building some blockchain games. And we'd seen Lightbringer as well, that was adding all sorts of transactions and value to Litecoin. So we got thinking about how we could build a game using Dash. Obviously, Dash platform was still on the horizon, as it has been for a while. And we wanted to take that and turn it into something, but we wanted to be original. So we started brainstorming some ideas. We drew on our whiteboard in the office a grid to play on. We printed out paper cards, and we just started game theory sort of testing. Our initial idea was an RNG based game where you have your main character, and that can summon other monsters and creatures to help it in its mission to defeat the other player's character. It's a 1v1 head-to-head game. And unfortunately, the RNG element, you might summon or you might fail, that didn't prove that great gameplay wise. So we moved to more of an energy structure. So yeah, we got started, we got dug in, and started building all that out. Now it's at a playable state, and the next step is to really dashify everything, as well as build out a library and documentation for other game developers to very easily integrate Dash and Dash platform into their games and into their processes and flows.
Well, dang. Well, I was going to ask to see the demo a bit later, but now I just want to see it now. Can we watch it now?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get that going.
Okay, so this is Summoners. As you can see, we have a hexagonal grid, and the game is a turn-based strategy. On the left, we have player 0, and on the right, player 1. Some useful information is up the top here, including which player you are, whose turn it is, and how much energy you have, and how much energy you are in per turn. You gain an extra energy per turn if you have a unit or your summoner on the green dotted tiles, and an extra 2 energy per turn if you have the pink tile captured. On the left here, you can see my deck. In the future, this will be hidden, and just below you can see 5 creatures in my hand. Energy is the resource used to summon these down, to help you in the objective of defeating the enemy summoner whilst protecting your own. Okay, let's get started. As you can see, I've moved my summoner over and brought down some burning spears, which cost me 1 energy, which you can see from the number at the top right of the tile. You can also see the stats on this tile. It has 2 attack, 1 health, and 1 movement speed. As you can see, a card from my deck has been randomly brought into my hand following this, and I'm ready to end my turn. Okay, so the opponent has unfortunately not been able to summon on their first turn because they don't have a 1-cost card. We're thinking of giving the second player an extra energy, or to allow their first summon unit the ability to move and attack right away. Game balance will come further down the line. Alright, let's keep moving and fast forward through the rest of this game and see how it plays out.
One of the interesting bits which I highlight here is direction combat is one directional. So rather than both units headbutting each other at the same time, it's just the first person to attack, whoever's turn it is, that unit its damage. We experimented with a staggered approach and with more sort of they both hit each other, or they take turns, but we found this added the most sort of novel gameplay because you could bring down a unit, attack, and then retreat, or however you wanted to approach that. You'll see here this game is definitely going in my favor at the moment with 3 units on the board, and I think it finishes just after this, and we're given with a brief summary of the outcome of the game at the end.
Okay.
There you go. So similar to sort of chess in a way, you have your units on the board. You've got to defeat the opponent's king, but this you bring down the units. You can move around the table. Different units have different mobilities, and yeah, it's obviously visual wise, it is quite basic where it's at right now. The goal was not the design side of stuff at the moment. That's the next stage. We're actually in talks with a technical artist to turn those assets and take the game from being a top-down, very basic visual game to almost a 3D game, somewhere between 2D and 3D, where it's kind of like an isometric perspective, which is called 2.5D, and that'll be to turn that game into a very visual production.
Huh. When you mentioned your initial, I guess, physical world playtesting, I wanted to show this image that I had found of
Ah,
you.
yes.
Can,
There we go.
I don't know if everybody can
So
see that. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, early days, just printing out paper with those are the energy cards and the table on the board. So you can see how the game's progressed into an actual real game. From that first physical game, we built a web game. So it was just built in HTML5 using Canvas with TypeScript, JavaScript. And then from there, we've taken it to Unity. So now that it's in Unity, the key thing is building out that whole library for the use of Dash ecosystem. But it's a fun game. Our friends have play tested it. We've spent hours playing it. There's still going to be balance, and there's going to be new cards with different factions. And right now, the cards, for example, when you summon them down, they can't move until their next turn. We're going to add ones where they can move quickly, or even when you summon them down, it does an area of effect damage, or however it is. So there's just going to be all sorts of features down the line there.
Okay. Well, going more in that thread of development. So we're not feature complete yet, as you've just said. And so I wanted to clarify, this was something that you had mentioned just this morning with regard to the title of the video. Is this game currently using Dash L1 or platform testnet?
So now the game isn't using platform or layer 1. We have done some experiments with using layer 1 for random number generation. In fact, there was a game that we built previously, but we can cover that more, a very basic game where we use Dash transaction signatures, which after discussion with Dash core group, they were considered fair entropy, completely random data that we could rely on for seeding a random number generator. And that'll be part of this, throughout hundreds of different games, thousands of different games, random number generation, whether that's drawing a random card from a deck in, let's say, a gambler game like poker, or in our case the unit, or the damage a unit does. If that is a varied between a certain amount and another, you need random number generation. And especially when it comes to e-gaming, so poker or slots or however, it has to be fair. And there's this whole concept of provably fair, where if someone can say, this machine, I mean, there's huge like legal structures for this in the States, but if you could do this online in a way, and there are companies doing this, where you can show that number has been provably fairly generated, and then odds aren't being manipulated. People worry about machines saying, oh, that machine will only pay out once it's had 100,000 in it, and then it'll pay out 50,000 or whatever it is. So, but there was a win on there last week, so I'm not going to play on that. Whereas if you can show that every roll, every card draw, everything is completely fair, that's novel and that's good. And if you can do that in a way where it's cheap and effective and on the blockchain and fully transparent, that's powerful.
So does the random number generation using L1 come from blocks being found?
No, it comes from the transaction signatures, from the actual instance end transaction being locked. So it's the work done by the masternode quorum, if I'm not mistaken, to validate and lock that transaction. So it's a BL sig, I think. It's part of Dash, really. It's it's not just in every other crypto's transactions. It's something that's specific to Dash.
Okay, so then beyond random number generation on L1, where does the platform component come in?
Oh, it's obviously, how long's a piece of string? Like, ultimately, platform is again a very open-ended product, and when it comes to gaming, that product could have hundreds of use cases. Obviously, there's the economy side of things, whether that is you're building and releasing NFTs on Dash platform that are cross game or cross universe or even cross studio. If I could take my items from Fortnite and bring them into Counter-Strike, or my identity, my avatar, if I could have my whole sort of economy and game state, even whether, in the case of summoners, at each move that's done on a staked game where users bet against each other. We haven't spoken about that, so we should speak about that. Yes, that can be stored on Dash platform, so everything can be seen historically as a record of data. And even just using Dash Platform as an effective part of their backend, you probably still need some level of game servers for, other aspects of the game. But if you can mitigate your need for that and just use Dash Platform as that database, or even in the future when data contracts have more features as part of the game logic, you can just outsource that, and it's a reliable, bulletproof network hosted all around the world, on 2000 whatever it is, high performance master nodes, whatever it ends up being. You can be confident in the reliability, the availability of that data, the transparency. It's just, the possibilities are endless, really, when it comes to using it.
So I remember reading in the initial specification of this game that the first feature intended to be added after what we've seen demoed is the ability to wager on the outcome of a game. Is that something that can be done on L1, or does that require platform to be done?
It can be done on L1, but it requires platform to be beautiful and seamless. So on layer 1, we can do this thing called, escrow to a degree, but reality is there's a concept called MAD, which is mutually assured destruction. So each user deposits into a 2 of 2 multi-sig wallet, and then if they don't sign it, then that money is just destroyed. So there's a certain trust, but it's very limited. There's ways you can get around that, whether you have a bond that is sliced if the user, doesn't sign the transactions they're supposed to, or one way that we're looking at doing it is having a third signatory, which will be operated by us, which is just an arbitrator. And then on the end of the game, it will automatically just sign the transaction to the winner, and then the winner only needs to sign that transaction. So effectively, you'd have a 2 of 3 multi-sig wallet that both users deposit into at the start of the game, and then at the end, we'll sign the transaction, and the winner will sign the transaction. And that's only in the case where the loser doesn't sign the transaction for whatever reason, and they would have to create a broken client and do all sorts of work to even be able to do that in the first place. And even then, it wouldn't work with this in place. But bring Dash Platform into the equation. Data contracts right now, they don't have any sort of layer 1 interoperability. They can't be used as a transaction criteria. Whereas in the future, they're not smart contracts in that sense. A future iteration, an early iteration, intends for the ability to have Dash Platform data contracts to be able to be used in transactions. So I would be able to say, the output of this. So I would be able to write 2 transactions, but only one of them is valid, and that would be the valid one based on the winner. So if this data contract is written to in this form, that this transaction is valid, i.e. the payment to the winner, otherwise this one is. And that way there would be no third party. It would all be done via Dash Platform, and it would all be trusted and or trustless, really. And the whole point is of that goes beyond just this game. That goes to any sort of escrow situation, any situation where that proof of transaction or proof of event occurring external to the transaction is stored on a database. So it's really powerful.
Oh, we just got a little bit of feedback from Ryan's side, but it should finish out in a moment. So then, okay, so it sounds like this sort of engine is reusable not only for other games, but even just for other basic escrow requiring applications.
I mean, platform has huge, ramifications in terms of anything like that, really. And the gaming is a great example, and it's one where we can build this reference project and this full product that uses that. But there are examples beyond that as well, and it's huge, where any multiple parties need to reach some resolution or agreement where that data can be stored on platform and then used as a transaction criteria. It's just, it's very powerful. And, I'm excited to demonstrate this in the game, and to provide a library that allows other developers, game developers or Unity developers to use this in their projects. But it does go beyond that. I mean, even most of the casino games in Vegas are built using Unity. This is not a, small technology. Their Unity is used by millions of developers, from indie small one-man teams to 1,000 developer teams. It's a very big project, and building that Unity library is obviously the first step of the sort of Dash platform and Dash gaming sort of journey in that regards. So yeah, I'm very excited.
So let's see. I don't know that is a. Does that question make sense to anybody?
It sort of does, but it's kind of different in relation. I'll answer it anyway. But so WeChat money to Dash platform. No, you can send WeChat to someone and have them convert it into Dash and then use Dash to top up your Dash platform credits. But you will just use Dash on Dash platform. You're not going to be using a separate currency. Apart from you may get people that release tokens on Dash platform. We'll get into that in a future video, I'm sure. But if you were looking to buy Dash, you could use WeChat, and a Dash platform application could actually act as the escrow provider for that in a way, so that they could have a proof of funds, a third-party escrow. You can do effectively a local Bitcoins using Dash platform. And I think that project's already been worked on, and may have been talked about last week very briefly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so people can, I mean, in its limited form, people can play this game right now if we give them the URL, right?
Yeah,
Ash?
yeah. It's just on
Okay.
summoners.gg. It
We
is
throw
a
that up
very
there.
yeah, it's a very basic demo. So it's at this stage, it's a proof of concept. It's a minimum viable product. We are looking to iterate on it, probably not until Q4 2022, because we're going to wait until platform's a little bit more stable. There's been exciting news this week about a release on that front, going to a testnet. But we're going to be sort of stepping back from this for a little bit, and then we'll be hitting it again in Q4. So right now, playable demo state. We'll probably work on some other proof of concept in terms of that maybe the staking side of things. We'll have a testnet version with that on pretty in the next quarter, but it's going to be a slower development pace for now.
I was just going to ask about testnet. Do you have plans to make this testnet compatible? And if so, when is that happening?
Yeah, so I mean, we built a game. Just important sort of a little segue on this. We built a game almost 2 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago, where there was a coin flip on Dash testnet effectively, and it was a provably fair coin flip, and that was again using that same layer 1 transaction signatures. So we're really happy to do the layer 1 stuff on testnet again. It's just the stability of Dash platform and developing against that, and actually how we gracefully interact with Dash platform. Obviously, myself and Ryan, and even there is another project I think Tim's working on, are trying to solve for that wallet decentralized application interaction layer. The way I'm approaching it is this MetaMask style wallet where it will create keys to write to certain data contract and share them with the decentralized application. But do we want to build a project where you're importing a mnemonic and then it's handling all of that, or do we want to try and extrapolate that away and get that done now? And that's kind of where my focus is for this next quarter, that I want to not try and do everything in every individual dApp whilst we're waiting on platform. I want to build this sort of more this gateway solution in terms of this wallet that can handle all those keys and all the transaction signing, the reading and writing to Dash platform, and sort of elegantly extrapolate that away from any dApp developers and dApps themselves. So that's kind of my focus for this next quarter.
So, please go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, do you have any plans to monetize the app itself?
At this stage, no. The core goal for this project really is that reference project. I'd love to see it be a production success. I enjoy the gameplay. I want to take this to full production. I want it to be visual. I want it to be almost like a eureka moment for any game developer that sees this. They'll play it, they'll be just like, this is great. How is it using the Dash platform? They'll see how easy it is to use Dash platform. So we will take it all that way. We will try and turn it into a production success with actual users using it, and then at some point maybe we would look to monetize it. Ultimately, I wouldn't make that decision myself. I would put that before the DAO. I would give them the option to say, hey, yes, we want this to go and be a property as part of the DIF's portfolio, or we want this to be, monetized slightly so that those funds can be used for marketing and it can be, independent of the DAO's funding. But ultimately, I wouldn't make that choice myself. That would be the network's choice. And obviously, everything would be MIT licensed, because that's the whole, purpose of the incubator. Everything will be fully open source.
Well, that was something I sure hadn't considered or heard of before. Ash, you're saying that games like this, should they ever be in a state that they can generate profit, that profit could be directed anywhere, and in this case, it could be directed to somewhere like the DIF, where the network itself can have these profits?
Yeah, ultimately, I don't think the DIF would own it outright 100%. There would have to be some operating entity. I mean, they could own it outright 100% and then, pay an operating entity to handle that side of things. It just depends what the DIF is, the appetite of the DIF and the DAO.
Mm-hmm.
The whole network has basically funded the building of this project as a reference project. If it then becomes an independent success of being a pure reference project, or they want it to, stand on its own 2 feet, become revenue generating, bring that yield back into the network so that can be then reinvested, however that works, I'm game. Ultimately, that decision belongs to the network, not to me. And I am
game.
I'm game. I'm very game. And it'd be exciting for me to see that happen. So, ultimately this project, the advantage of this with many of the incubator projects is that we're killing multiple birds with one stone, effectively. Like, this is a great reference project. It's the justification for building out a great library that other developers can use. It further tests and stresses Dash platform. It could become a good standalone project. Like, there's so much to this that is advantageous to the network. It's just logical. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what's next there.
You may have touched on this already, but maybe you could recap on it or expound on it. But what do you plan on using Dash platform for in the game? And is that, would there be other alternatives? Like, what would be the alternative, and what would be the pros and cons of using Dash platform?
I touched on this regarding the staking. So a brief recap on that is, without Dash platform, we can do a mutually assured destruction, a multi-sig wallet, like 2 or 3 signatures with an arbitrator. With Dash platform, the next iteration will have the ability for Dash platform data to be used as a transaction criteria, so that we could step back. There's no arbitrator needed. Arbitrator. You wouldn't need that third party. It would just be a 2 of 2, but the transactions would be pre-signed, but only the one where the winner that had that data in Dash platform would actually be a valid transaction. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is game state. So rather than saying, hey, here's this centralized party that we're relying on for the state of our current game and what we agree on, we can write all that data. We can say, hey, this is what the player did, or their first move, their second move, their third move. And that historical log will be, immutable and on the blockchain and Dash platform. And that kind of thing is very powerful in terms of having that full transparency, but also removing that component. If you can say, okay, here's an application you can run in a browser, and it will handle and read and write all that data without any third party. You're reading and writing data to Dash platform. It is a fully decentralized application at that point. And this is the whole beauty of Dash platform versus, Ethereum smart contracts, that you're not that data is valid because it's that data. You're doing the execution on your side in terms of, rather than the Ethereum virtual machine. And in future, maybe we'll have more of that capability. But there's no third party. You're not saying, hey, I need someone else to matchmake for me. I need someone else to handle the data of what's happening in this game. I'm just running an application on my device, be that my mobile phone or my browser. Again, Unity, you can publish to browser, to mobile phones, to desktop. It's, a multi-platform system. And instead of saying, this service needs to be running for this game to be playable, this game is it's there, it's on the, everything I need for that, whether I'm matchmaking and looking for an opponent, or whether I need to know what that opponent's moves have been, that can all be stored on Dash platform, and I don't need to rely on anyone really to access that, and no one can stop me accessing that at all.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap from my understanding, what's interesting about this is that all of the execution, the code execution is done on the client's browsers, but the data can be stored on what would normally be a server, but in our case, it's going to be Dash platform. And that's what makes it, you can have the full application. If you needed any kind of server-side execution, then we would need either smart contracts on Dash platform, or we would need a separate server. But you're saying that the game doesn't need any server-side code execution, just server-side code storage, or not code storage, but data storage, state storage. So that is kind of what makes Dash platform unique, as far as I can tell in this space. And this is one of those games that will kind of test that and demonstrate that. So I'm looking forward to a stable test net that we can port this onto, and to kind of show that, because I think that's one of the things that's been a big mystery to people, is like how do decentralized applications really work on Dash platform? And in a way, it's not even really a decentralized application. It's a decentralized state storage, where the execution is happening on the clients.
And
So
each
then
client can validate that. It's not, you're not trusting somebody else and how they've, how their client is operating. You can validate that data matches your expectations, and that it's been done in the right way. So, and the data contracts provide the schema for how that is done, and the structure. Like, that is the beauty of Dash platform, and I hope we can try and communicate that better, and I hope DCG can communicate that better to developers and to the community. And I think that it's a very important point.
So to be able to take advantages of the kinds of things you guys are talking about, namely to access this decentralized storage wherein the execution of applications takes place on the client side only, are we talking about like DAPI? Am I using an old-fashioned term here? Or what would the client need to do in order to be able to interact in the way that we're describing? Would there need to be a download of some kind, a browser extension?
So in terms of actually reading and writing the data could be done without any, other anything else running. You can just use the JavaScript library or whatever. There's multiple libraries, and it's very lightweight. You don't have to download the blockchain, sync headers, whatever it is. You can use a library which you're then relying on a trusted sort of node to give you that data. But you can independently verify that with multiple nodes. There's no issue there really. But in terms of actually writing the data, you would need to have a Dash account in some form, whether that's a wallet. You would need a wallet, or even a private key technically. So you would need to be able to have that, whether you've installed an extension, you're using a web wallet, whatever it is. You would have to have something to be able to write that data with.
So just to touch on the DAPI term that you're using,
please.
Usually when people talk about an API, they're usually talking about so application programming interface. It's usually a client that's requesting data, and that data, typically these days that data comes back in the form of JSON, JavaScript object notation. So it's just data. You're requesting data, you're getting data back. So DAPI is just doing that exact same thing, but instead of interacting with a server, a trusted server, you're interacting with one of the Dash master nodes as your server, instead of like some corporate entity. So that's the difference. And I think that, that term is still, it's not an old term. That DAPI is still a thing. DAPI is still a thing. So you're using the term properly, but that usually doesn't involve requests for execution. It sometimes can, and I'm not a master programmer by any means, but usually it's a request for data, not a request for a function. That typically you'd use the term RPC for requesting a functional call.
And so the wallet that you and AJ are working on, Ryan, the wallet that we covered 2 or 3 weeks ago here on the show, is that something that would perform these functions that we're talking about, so that no one would need to download more than just say that wallet to be able to get the full interaction of what one envisions the Summoners game to eventually be?
Yeah, like Ash can touch on this again when I'm done, but like he said, you need some kind of wallet to do the requests, because that costs a small amount of Dash when you're requesting data, or when you're requesting to store data, at least. And so you would need a wallet. So yes, our Dash wallet, our browser wallet, would be able to perform that function, given that there are integrations with the game. But Ash could, maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, ultimately, the way we're looking at doing this, the approach that we're taking, myself and Ryan, are different but complementary. Mine's more focused using the SDK side of things that Dash Core Group have released, which has a lot of dependencies. And I don't, I appreciate that Ryan is, his wallet is, it's called vanilla, but I feel like somewhat of a derogatory term these days, but it's like more of a purist solution. It removes a lot of these dependencies. It's probably going to be more efficient and more secure. So I like it. And in time, there'll be established standards for how these wallets and dApps integrate. There'll be here is the communication expected from a decentralized application. Here is how the wallet will respond to that, and vice versa. So as we build out that standard, his wallet will have that, my wallet will have that. It will be something that we work on and we iterate going forwards, and we'll work together on that standard in the same way. Any sort of the World Web Consortium agrees on HTML5 standards, will have this communication layer as a standard. And that means that no matter what wallet the user has, even let's say MetaMask added full Dash platform support, they would use the same structure. No matter what wallet, the user can use any wallet with any decentralized application, any supported wallet, I guess you could say. So it should be agnostic. There shouldn't be locked into any provider in any structure.
That would be a step further. Yeah, that would probably come later though. Like the prototype, the initial minimum viable product would most likely just come with the wallet that Ash has in mind, and then we would build integrations as we go based on what Ash just said. The standards that emerge.
Okay. So I don't know, maybe I just haven't joined that many conversations in years past, but this is certainly the first conversation I've joined that is about a game on Dash. Is this the first game on Dash, Ash?
There was a project back in 2018 that received some funding to build a Dash game. It was some students at the university that were working on game development in their third or fourth year, I believe. They came up with some concepts, but they never released anything. And that project, as far as I'm concerned, is abandonware, and unfortunately did not go anywhere. Ourselves, myself and Alex, we built a game via the Incubator again, almost, like I said, 3 years ago, I think now, pretty much, maybe 2.5 years ago. That's a coin flip game, a provably fair coin flip game. Very simple for developers to basically use to understand how you can use BL6 as entropy for random number generation. I would say between that and the other coin flip games, those are probably the ones that I know of. Ryan, do you know of any other Dash or games?
No, I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that covers the questions that I had. I know that I'm still just left here reeling about, for example, okay, so diff aside, like profits from games deployed onto the Dash network, say by the Incubator or by anybody else, could, for example, also burn profits, right? Like, couldn't profits just programmatically be burned?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's open ended how people approach that. We've seen other projects in the crypto ecosystem that have used burning as a mechanic for, even minting new tokens as well. There's all sorts of possibilities there. Absolutely. Right.
Any
Yeah. Any thoughts?
final-
There's a good question from James there. Just to
Please.
reiterate on the summoners side of things. The game that this is sort of most analogous to would be Hearthstone. But instead of Hearthstone having just a flat grid like that, where players and creatures attack each other whilst they're protecting their main units, this just has a hex grid. I know the UI isn't the most intuitive, but that'll come in time. All of these things are iterations. You start with the minimum viable product and you iterate and improve. We'll make it easier for you to understand. We'll have a tutorial. There'll be nice cards in a hand, in a deck. Right now the art style is just very basic. It is just and I do have to run it when I demo it with people. I have to act as somewhat of a concierge. I have to help them and explain things, but that will get better. It is like Slay the Spire, but it's not like a roguelike. But from a visual aspect, the future design will be like Slay the Spire. Realistically, right now, the goal is more a Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, which for Amanda, if you're unfamiliar with either of those, they are, and Rion too, they are incredibly popular games with millions of users, and they're very revenue successful as well. People put a lot of money into those games, and they work on mobile as well, which, it's a cross-platform game. The goal is that you can play it casually and have just a 5-minute match, or you can play it on your phone super casually, however you like, really. And that's the goal with this. Like, we want to be as accessible as possible to anyone.
Fab. Okay. Well, absent any further comments from any of us, I'll say thanks for joining Rion and me today, Ash, and viewers. We look forward to seeing you all again, same time, same place next week. Yeah.
Thanks, Ash.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.